we've got like a good bit of content and stuff to get through today, and I definitely want us to be able to get through it all. So before we get started, first of all, if you popped in and did that little bit of pre-work, thank you. I'm not going to spend any time on it. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew how to use the tool, and just so that as we were all getting set up, we could see who all of our friends in the workshop are, and then that's something you can go back to later today if you wanted to grab someone's name and make sure that you connect with them offline later on. So before I get started, and before I share my screen, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, and you can use the sort of little thumbs up reaction guy. I'm wondering, out of everyone we have here, how many of you are using journey maps as a regular part of your work? Yeah? Okay, about half. All right, so for people who are using journey maps regularly, how many of you are making them in PowerPoint, Keynote, Excel, something like that? No one? Okay. Design tools like Adobe or Mural even, or something like that. Miro. Yeah. Is anyone using a software that's made for journey mapping? No? I don't know. Okay. Okay, cool. So what I want is, if the answer is yes, give me a thumbs up. I don't know if everyone's upgraded Zoom, but we've got like 6 choices of reactions now. Would you say that in your business, your maps are super organized? Give me a thumbs up if it's a yes. Ooh, Sydney's winning. Okay, cool. So what we're going to talk about today, so the title of our workshop is Journey Map Ops. And so we're going to talk about how we can use journey maps to kind of operationalize design in our business and start using them as a management tool. And so that requires setting a foundation with our maps and getting organized with them, and then using them to ladder information up across our organization. So that is largely what we are going to be doing today. I am going to share my screen, and we're going to get going with just a little bit of content. And let me see here. Just going to move all this over. All right. So who can see a slide? Can everyone see slide? Okay, fantastic. Great. I'm going to leave it to Polly to let any latecomers in, because I can no longer see them coming in on the Zoom. And we're going to get started with a little bit of sort of setup for Journey Map Ops. So I guess the first thing we should do is just talk about the company I work for. It's called More Than Metrics. So if you're familiar with any of these titles, this is Service Design Doing, or our Methods book, or this is Service Design Thinking. These were all published by our CEO, Mark Stickdorn. So he's one of the authors of these titles. And a lot of the thinking in these books really drives our thinking around our journey map product that we make called Smaply. So it's a software for creating journey maps. And then we also provide service design coaching and training and support to our clients. And sort of this is the foundation of our understanding. And then also, before we get started, just a little bit about me. So I've been working in service design since about 2014. Time is flying. I had an initial career in tech sales that never really fit me great. I started out by doing a marketing degree, and this was back in the 90s, and no one was talking about strategic design, at least not in my corner of the world. And I chose marketing because I really loved that human element. And fast forward a little over a decade later, and when I found service design, I really felt like I found home. The language spoke to me. What service design cared about were the same things I cared about. And even though it was a whole new language, it really resonated with me. And I had a very cool person who took a chance on me and hired me into her team on an agency. And I spent 4 years working with some really, really smart people. And by the time I kind of wrapped up there, I was leading our service design practice, at which point I went freelance. So today I work for More Than Metrics and I support our customers primarily in North America with our journey mapping software and helping them understand how they can embed and grow service design in their businesses. And then here in Canada, which is where I live, I also do freelance service design work. So a lot of government work, but not only government, and sort of applying all of these principles of service design across the board. So here's what we're going to do today, if I can advance my slides. So we're going to talk a little bit about where things go wrong. Not so much with journey mapping, but with projects and in organizations. We're going to cover some basics of journey mapping that are important for us to understand, just a couple quick concepts. And then we're going to work in teams to build a repository of maps and show how we can use them as a management tool. Once we've done that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can operationalize that in a business. So basically, what's the person structure that you need to get in place so that you can actually set something like this up. And then we're going to do a Q&A. This is like a taster of journey map ops. There's a lot of complexity inherent, I think, in any organization trying to change the way they work. But I think this will give a good flavor of how things could be. As I present, please, if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. I can't see, you can see me looking away. I've kind of got two screens going up and my videos of you guys wandered to my other screen. So I'm going to have to just kind of let that go. So let's kind of jump in to what happens normally and where do things go wrong. So this is a really, really simplified version of the traditional way, right? Somebody makes a guess. Somebody at the boardroom table says, well, I think we should do it this way. And then you kind of put together a Gantt chart, project plan, execute things. And then at the end, you hope it's the right thing for your users. I think we all know that this doesn't work, and that's why we all work in design, is because we want it to look different. And we want it to look, my slides do not want to advance. There we go. A little bit more like this, right? So we want it to look like asking real people, prototyping with real people, doing some iterative loops around what that might look like and adapting over time to real needs. And this is what we're advocating for in our practices today. But we can't say this. We can't say, okay, great, you just do it this way and all of those issues with complexity are solved, wash our hands of it, we're done, presentation over, because we've solved all the world's problems. We know it's not true. We know that this work, it's like peeling an onion, and it's just not that simple. And so, the truth is that as organizations are trying to become more agile, there's a long, long path to go down. There's a lot of complexity involved in making that happen. And there's a few different ways that complexity or that challenge in getting from waterfall to agile comes through. So first thing, we see this problem we have around buzzwords. And I think we hear it not just around agile, but we hear it around service design, around journey mapping, around personas, around a lot of the tools and the things that we rely on. We see them becoming buzzwords, and people use those words, but they're not really doing that work. So there's always that challenge. And then you get these, in the agile space, sort of like, yeah, we call it agile, but it's kind of like sprinty waterfall thing that we're doing. So that's a challenge. Sometimes you have a department who is kind of, they've made the changes necessary. They're ready to start sprinting and moving quickly, but they haven't, the whole organization hasn't gone down that path, and the organization strikes back. So you're trying to move really quick, and all of a sudden another department steps in, and that really quick sprint turns into this long, winding road that can take a really long time to get through. My slides. There we go. Sometimes you might run into another department and they just have a totally different take. They think you should be doing it differently. They think you don't understand the problem properly because you're looking at it from your view. They're looking at it from their view. So that creates some complexity. You might get down the path and all of a sudden your project gets frozen because you realize that you and another project are fighting for the same resources. And now you're stuck because you can't get at what you need to keep moving forward, because again, you've got different parts of your organization marching to the beat of a different drum. And then of course, there's that whole person at the end who steps in and says, hey, I'm important and I wasn't consulted and I disagree. And all of that effort that you've put through can send you right back to the beginning if that person has enough power. So it's complicated, right? Every time something happens in Zoom, I have to reselect my slides. It's very strange. So what we really have happening here is our silos are still stepping in and fighting against us, right? They persist. They represent different ways of working. They can even represent completely different cultures in our organization. And often we even see, like, we're seeing whole teams of service designers cropping up and people who are like, we are user-centric, and they are, but they're sitting in a silo. And so they're still trying to solve that problem of silo busting and crossing all of those parts of the organization so that the whole organization can truly become customer-centric. So some of the things that are contributing to the siloing, right? People produce work in different formats. People are working in different ways. They're communicating in different ways. So you see language that's different based on different departments' expertise. So not everyone else understands exactly how they're speaking or what they're talking about. You see incompatibility of tools. So you kind of have this, this wall that prevents you from democratizing your data because not everyone can get at it. I think a really good example of this in our world is a journey map that's been locked into Adobe. I don't come from a classic design background. I don't know how to use Adobe Illustrator. If someone gives me a map in that format and I think something needs to update to move it forward, I'm locked out. And that's just one small example of tools and incompatibilities that can happen across silos. And then I think the last big one that we talk about a lot in service design is that everyone's speaking from their own perspective. So we don't have that shared story and that shared understanding of what it is that we're talking about. So how do we establish that customer-centric base structure for everybody? And Journey Map Ops is kind of our way of thinking about how we can use our understanding of the customer experience across the organization to start creating a shared language, a shared tool, and a shared perspective. So you can kind of use journey maps as a management tool to help keep those fast moving silos on the same page and help connect a lot of these new practices that are coming up as teams are becoming more agile. So you might have design ops cropping up in your organization, you might have DevOps cropping up, or you just have all of your standard departments, legal, contracts, people that are just doing their things and are disconnected from each other. So this is a way that we can kind of keep people linked. So before we dive into journey map ops, we need to talk a little bit about journey maps in and of themselves. And I know a lot of us on in this workshop make journey maps on a regular basis or use them. So we're not going to go too deep into the making of maps, but we're going to touch on a couple really important principles. So the first thing is around using journey maps. What do we normally use them for? We use them for a lot of different things, to understand and visualize our customers' experience. Maybe we're really organized, and so we're kind of using it as a hub for our research data. We're using them hopefully as tools to help us plan and communicate with other departments and get alignment with teams and ultimately innovate our products and services. But there's a few different ways that we can use those maps. So before we can kind of talk about this third thing on the slide here, management maps, we want to clarify the first two kinds of maps, so workshop maps and project maps. So a workshop map, maybe you make it as a part of a project, maybe it's part of a training, maybe you've made one in a workshop as a part of a research tool. And they usually contain information that we need to keep, but they often just serve as a framework and a structure to guide some really important conversation that happens in those workshops, right? We learn from them, we take information out of them, and then we bring it into the project that we're working on or into that problem that we're trying to solve. Your project map is really that map that is more based on solving a particular problem or attacking a particular challenge, and you might be using software so that this map can be what we would call a living boundary object, which means it's something that is up to date, that uses a language everyone can understand, and we kind of keep it alive through the life of this project, so that we can understand exactly what it is we're learning as we're going. So if you think about having a map for every project, once you finish the project, that map, it often ends up in a drawer. It often ends up in a file structure. But it's something that you want to be able to refer back to, right? So if you're building a repository of maps in your organization, so kind of starting to think about how do we put all of our maps in the same format in a place where everybody can access them and we can keep using our learnings over and over again. You want to think about having like a single map for every project that outlines the differences in the journey compared to beginning of the project to when you've been finished. Maybe showing your key insights, relevant data, maybe attaching to certain relevant research that was done and those reports that came out of that, and putting them in sort of a searchable, findable format so that future projects can build on top of those maps and you're not repeating efforts. So you want to think about, even though those projects close and you move to a new project, you're still able to get at that data later on. Management maps are the maps that we're mostly going to be working with and talking about today. And this is what we talk about when we say journey map ops. So these are maps that are kept up to date all the time and that are used to sort of guide organizational decisions. They generally start at a really high zoom level, and we might go in a couple layers, but not too far. So you think about the customer life cycle, and then maybe you go in a couple of layers from that to really understand what's happening. And we're going to talk about that now in a second. And then you also want these maps to be linked together so that you know that where a single step in your high-level journey trickles down to a more detailed map, you know how those are linked and where they sit kind of relative to one another. So let's just talk a little bit about that zooming in and zooming out. I think that's like such a common skill set in service design, the ability to think in detail and think big picture. And this is just really how it shows up in our maps. So at the highest level, we're going to show a full end-to-end experience. So sort of sitting at that customer life cycle. And then you can dive into each step and then break that one step into multiple steps and just kind of keep going deeper until you have that network of maps. So we often sort of compare the zooming in and zooming out of journey maps to how you would zoom in or zoom out when you go to Google Maps and look up an address, right? You can zoom all the way out and see the whole world, or you can zoom right in and just see your house. So if we start with a high level journey map, so this is a travel experience. I know it's a little pre-COVID, but we're going to do some dreaming today and live in the travel world. So you think about that high level experience, and it goes from dreaming right through to the arrival, right? All of these steps. But then what you can do is you can break that down. So you might zoom in to the airport experience. So, well, this whole high level journey, this could take a year from when I start dreaming about a trip till I actually get there. But when I zoom into my airport experience, now I'm coming in a little tighter, and maybe this experience is a few hours. So we're tightening up our timeline, we're tightening up our focus. And then we look at that airport experience and we can see how we're now breaking that into multiple steps. And that is a whole journey in and of itself. And then each step in our high level life cycle journey might break down to another journey. And then we can zoom in again. So now I have my airport experience coming across here, but I can zoom right into the boarding experience. And that's maybe a 20-minute experience. It's much shorter. We're getting into a much closer timeline, and something that we almost call micro journeys, right? So maybe it's the checking in on the app experience. It's that boarding the plane experience. It's that experience of being on the plane itself, but getting tighter and tighter. So what you end up with in your management maps is this network of maps where you've got your highest level map sitting at the top, then you've got sort of 2 or 3 levels down, or whatever makes the most sense for your organization. But either way, you have a sense of what is the whole experience, and where do the things that me or my team are responsible for sit within that network. And that's really kind of the view that you want to be able to have. The other thing that I like to talk about before we get deeper into this is an experience map, or an experience focused journey map versus a product focused journey map. And so when we think about what a journey map should be, it really should be the actual sequence of action that a certain customer experiences. So it needs to be like in the context of their real life. Sometimes organizations will only map the touch points that they are aware of or that they have control of. So they might not think about the ride to the airport because that's with a taxi company, or their mom drove them and they have, no relevance in that part of the experience. So they'll leave that out. But because so much about the context of a person's life affects the way that they experience those touch points that you do have control of, you really want to think about that entire end-to-end experience and not just your own touch points. So when you're mapping, you might mark them. You might say, okay, in these 4 spots, this is where we really have influence and have control. But you want to be looking at those things in context of the broader experience, and not just on their own. So we have a network of maps, and we have a network of maps that are looking at our whole experience. And that is really what we want to build out as a repository so that we can get started with journey map ops. Okay, so before we can talk about the next bit, which is the operations part of journey map operations, we're gonna go and actually build them out in some teams and look at how we can ladder data up to our top level map to get a good understanding of what's going on in our business. I'm just going to stop this share for now. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we move into some exercises?
I just wanted to ask quickly, what happens with those steps where you don't have control, meaning that are not part of your product fully, but where do you get the information, or who do you need to contact to actually map those steps fully?
Yeah, so they should really come from customer research, your whole or user research. Your whole map should be based on research and validated with research. So by validating your research, by going out there and talking to the people who are experiencing whatever that experience is, you'll come to understand their experience with those pieces of the journey that you control, but you'll also come to understand the context that they're coming into those experiences from. You'll understand that broader picture of how your service experience is fitting into their lives when you do that work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, you're welcome.
You may be getting this later, but who are the keepers and organizations of the management maps in the repositories? Is it the design unit within the organization? Is it strategic planning?
Yeah, so we are going to talk about that. I've got some late joiners. I'm just letting some people in here. We are going to talk about who those people should be, but to answer your question quickly, your highest level map should really be the responsible of the highest level design related person in your organization. So if you've got a CXO or someone at that C level, they should really be in on that for sure. For sure. And then depending on the size of your organization, if you'll figure out like how many people should really be involved in this whole process.
Great, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So what we're going to do now is we are going to move into the mural. Marcella, do I have you here on Zoom now? I do. Okay, great. I just saw your message there in the mural. So what I'd like everybody to do is to go to the second room that I invited you to. So the one that's titled SDGC Journey Map Ops. And I'm going to walk you through what we are going to be doing together. I'm just going to unhide a whole bunch of information. Okay. And I am going to summon everyone to me and hide all those cursors so it's not insane. Is everyone up on the mural?
Hi, Nicole, this is Katie. I know we were talking before because my initial work email wasn't connecting. I thought with my personal it was working because I see Nicole's workspace, but I just realized I don't have any mural boards shared with me or any spaces. There's no
interesting.
rooms.
Okay, I just invited you directly into this one. Hopefully that worked. Anybody else? Nina. Okay, I'm seeing you as being already a guest.
Oh, it's the same. I thought it's another mural you meant. It's the same one that you sent us.
Yeah, so if you in mural, if you just go to the top, are you in the intro and pre-work page right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So on the top left, there's like a little arrow where you can back out to more of a dashboard view. There should be a second room there.
Oh, okay.
Called SDGC Journey Map Ops.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay. I invited everyone into both, but I'm seeing that a lot of you don't have it. So let me just see about getting you all in. Irina, already a guest. Okay.
I think I'm not there either.
All right, I'm going to share the link, copy the link. I'm going to share it in the Zoom chat and everyone can just join from there. It's these little things that make remote harder, hey? It's like you need a little extra time to get all the tech worked out. All right. Is everybody in? How many do I have here? 5.
Is the link already in the chat?
Yeah. I put the mural link. Oh, I sent it to SDGC privately. That's not helpful. How about I send it to everyone in the meeting? Okay, the link is in the chat. All right. Is everybody in?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. All right, if you're not in, speak up now. I see a whole bunch of people, so that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna summon everyone to me here and just hide all those cursors because it's like ants crawling all over the place. So if everybody can click on up at the top right, there's like the little hamburger menu, and when you click it, you get an outline to the right. So if everyone clicks on that, you can see that there's 5 teams. So I'm going to split you randomly through the Zoom breakout room into 5 teams. So once I do that, you'll be able to see which room number you're in, and that's going to be your team number. Each team is going to be focused on a different map. So team 1, you are going to be the high level map. So you're the management. You guys are owning the full travel life cycle. I've already actually put the stages of the life cycle in there, and you're not focused on any particular persona. Okay, so you're looking at a very zoomed out high level map. I'll talk about what you're putting in the map in a second. Team 2, you are going to be zoomed in 1 level, and you're going to be looking at the airport experience, and it's for a parent. So your persona is the parent, and you're mapping the journey of a family who's going on vacation from that parent's perspective. So you can think about what that airport experience might look like from the parent's point of view, and that is what you're going to be mapping. Team 3 is also going to be looking at the airport experience, but I want you to think about it from the perspective of a business traveler at the airport. So it's going to be a little bit of a different journey than our team who's working on the parents. Team 4, you are going to be mapping the experience of the parent again, but they're checking in the whole family for the flight. You can choose whichever way you want as a team for how they're checking in. So whether they're using an app, the kiosk, or going to the airport and talking to airline staff while they're there, it's entirely up to you. But it's the check-in experience for that parent checking in the whole family. And then last but not least, I'm sure you could guess, team 5 is going to be the check-in experience for our business traveler. And again, you can choose any sort of touch point or channel that you want for how it is that they're doing that. So when we put together a management map, we're putting different information in it than when we do a regular journey map. Some of the things are the same, but some of the things are going to be a little bit different. So what everyone's going to do is, the first thing is you're going to fill out the steps and the storyboard. So you're going to have 5 minutes to do that. It's quick. For the storyboard, over on the left, you can click the star, and that gives you a bunch of icons. And then there's like a little mountainy thing where you can access images. So if you want to grab pictures that are relevant for your storyboard, you can do that there. So you'll have 5 minutes to fill out your steps and your storyboard. When that 5-minute timer rings, even if you didn't get to the end of the map, which is short, there's only 6 steps in it, I want you to jump to the next part, which is KPIs or metrics. So this is where you need to use your imagination and think, if my team was in charge of this journey, what sorts of customer-centric KPIs might we be tracking to understand the quality of this experience? And you're going to put those down. When that 5 minutes goes, you're going to jump to the next one, which is your pain points. So what are some possible pain points that might need addressing in these steps of the journey? And then for your last 5 minutes, you are going to, or rather your second to last 5 minutes, you're going to map projects. So again, you need to use your imagination and think about, if my team were in charge of this journey, what sorts of projects might we be working on to address these pain points? Or what other projects in the organization might be happening that are going to affect this experience I'm responsible for? And that's a really important nuance, because there's often a lot of things going on in the organization that are owned by people who do not think about the experience. It's not their job to. Maybe it's an operating procedure that's changing. Maybe there's something changing in the legal documentation, and that's going to trickle up and ultimately affect how the experience happens. And so you need to think about, what are those projects? And in the real world doing this, it would be your job to go figure out, what else is going on in the organization that's affecting this journey that I am responsible for? So you're going to use your imagination and think about what projects might be ongoing that are going to affect this experience. And then finally, your last 5 minutes, you are going to choose one person from your team to represent you in the bigger group. And you're going to choose 3 metrics, 3 pain points, and 3 projects. And we're going to carry those forward into the main map as a group and see what we can find out. How's everyone feeling?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
What organization do we represent here? So we are a travel agency, or we are...
That is a great question. We are going to say that you are an airline.
Airline, okay, great.
We're going to say that you are an airline. Yep. So what you're going to do, I already explained what you're going to do. Does everybody understand the instructions?
Can you provide a little more detail on the storyboard row? What was
Yeah, sure. So in a storyboard, I mean, the idea is that every step in your journey should have something to visually guide that step, so that when people look at your map, they can really quickly get an idea of what's going on in that step. So you think about like a description of what happens in that step. Your corresponding storyboard block should be an image that helps convey that idea. Obviously, in this exercise, it's more important that you complete the steps than the storyboard. But what I recommend you do is, you all have access to put things on the board. So we call it many pens and many papers. So everyone should add stickies or images, work together. You can delete the things that are kind of overlapping or samey, and you can move quite quickly if you work that way. Okay. Okay, so I am going to split you into your rooms. Once you are split into your rooms, you'll see what team number you're on, and then you can just click on the mural outline and go to that part of the board for your team. And then what's going to happen on that mural board is, there's a little timer at the top that I'm going to set, and every 5 minutes it's going to actually sound like that button you hit for help in an airplane. And that's your signal to move on to your next row. Okay. I think also in Zoom, you can ask for help, or I'll watch the chat in Mural as well in case anyone has questions. All right. And we're going to come back in 25 minutes. All right. Everyone should be back now. How was that for everybody?
Super.
Short time.
very
We
fast?
wanted to continue this
Awesome.
conversation.
It's
we wanted to
fast.
discuss more.
Okay, great. So everyone's got a little journey map, which is fantastic. And did everyone pick their 3 that they're rolling up? 3 KPIs, 3 pain points, and 3 projects?
Yes.
Yeah. No?
I think we got to
Oh,
talk
no.
about 2, I think we agreed on.
Okay, well, whatever you grab, this is the great thing about doing a workshop like this is it is for learning, not making any real business decisions. So it's meant to be illustrative.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, I think
It
we've got
is
about $10 million worth of projects, so
Right. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with team 5. And team 5, what I want you to do is to share with us which items. I'm not going to have you share your whole map because we don't have a lot of time left, but just share those items that you want to share with the group. And then I want you to take them and stick them up on team 1's map, wherever it is they belong. And I know it's going to overlap their stuff, and that's okay. Everything can be moved. So team number 5, who is going to represent team 5?
We didn't agree on that. We didn't get to talk about it.
Okay.
No, we didn't. But do you want to go or? Okay. Okay, I can take it.
Great.
Okay, great. Okay, so just the top 3 for a business traveler. When he received a push to check in, probably on his phone, he gets probably the option of picking a seat. But as a business traveler, you might need to check with your company if you're allowed to spend extra money on upgrades.
I'm going to ask you to just share the 3 that you want to move forward, just because we don't have a lot of time. So 3
Yes.
KPIs, 3 pain points, and 3 projects.
Yes. So when it's going to
Great.
pick a seat, the KPI metric would be the number of business travel upgrades.
Okay.
Points costs money, and not sure companies okay with that. And a project is that someone is working on partnering with companies to show what the company allows during the process for the traveler.
Okay, I see what you mean. So like, what kind of upgrades could I get, or how am I allowed to change things? Or
Yes,
just
so there
understanding
could be
the rules.
limitations, or there could be like, assurance of that what you're doing is allowed, kind of.
Okay.
So that's one, and this, the second one we talked about is fastening the baggage tags, because they could be like confusing, like how much am I going to rip off, which part am I going to keep, and stuff like that. So as a KPI, we set the number of customer service inquiries. And the pain point would be then printing out and put the baggage tag on, which is not easy to understand. And the project is like someone working out a printed instruction on the baggage tag, like the design of the tag itself.
Okay, great. And is there a third one that you'd like to share?
Not really. Maybe someone else in my group has something. We didn't get around to it really.
Oh, that's okay. So what I want you to do is copy and paste the ones that you just read out. Copy them and then paste them up on the map that belongs to team number 1.
I will.
Figure out where they go.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to ask team number 4. Do you have a spokesperson?
We have 2 spokespersons.
Okay, well you can fight over it. Let's hear your 3 things.
Okay, so we have picked up check-in experience via an app where we thought about parents, and the first KPI, our metric, is how many. So we started the journey about from an email, but which which you get when you have some time till the registration to the flight. So, and we thought about how many emails and how many clicks. And the pain points is some people don't receive it, and some people don't like it, the text of the an email. And then we thought about the app, and the project is not about an email, but about the whole app. So maybe it should be not only an app for registration, and maybe it should be a project about creating a super app, your travel concierge, and some lifestyle app, and you should be there, and you just have some push.
Okay.
And automatic keying, you know. So we we made all the journey upside down a little bit with this project. And the second one
okay.
will present my colleague from France.
Okay, nice. So the second one is about how you put your flight number and your surname of all the family names on the app. So the key metrics is about how many times you spend to do that, and it should be really fast. The pain points that we have is we spend too much time to find a flight number. I can't copy paste it from the letter that I have received. So some of the projects that we think about is first one, creating a deep link to not have to copy paste the number of the flight and to make it easier for the parents that is using the app. And the last one, I can continue?
Yes, absolutely.
And the last one is about how you choose your seat and options. So the key metrics is how many people choose options. The pain points are too complex options or no seats together available. And one of the solutions that we think about is providing family priority options.
Okay, great. So it's interesting because what I'm already seeing, which is what we want to see when we start coming together with other teams and sharing our maps, is your super app. That might include the project that our first team had around maybe partnering to show what different companies allow and encourage. Maybe that data sits in your app. So we have two projects that may be kind of approaching the solving of a similar problem, but we have two different teams thinking about them in two different ways. So team 4, we're going to have you also copy and paste those things you just shared and bring them up to team number 1's map.
Okay.
All right. Moves a lot faster when we can just scurry across the room with Post-its in our hands, but you guys are awesome. All right, team number 3, do we have a spokesperson?
Oh,
Scott, you can go ahead.
Okay, I guess I've been volatile. Now I'll go for it. Yeah, so we were the business traveler. Okay, so three KPIs and 3 pain points, 3 projects. So obviously time is the biggest thing for our business traveler. So really kind of the KPIs was, you know, time, how long did it take to book transit to the airport, how long did it get to get through the airport, from orientation, check-in, and then hassle, you know, the how much of a hassle was it to get to security. So again, time was kind of the biggest one going through, but then also kind of ease of use or convenience as a secondary one. For pain points, you know, obviously as a business traveler, you might be going from meeting to meeting, you might be flying into a city, kind of going back out the same day. So it's really kind of like, you know, traffic delays. Can you get to the airport on time? Can you find the transport easily? And then can you kind of avoid the lines? And then we also noted too, as a business traveler, once you get to the airport, you might have to work on that, make some final tweaks to that PowerPoint presentation. You might need to charge your phone. So you need some additional help once you're waiting for that flight. That someone on a leisure trip would not. So our projects, I think, we talked about kind of integrating maybe the transport taxi options into the airport or into the airline app. We talked about being made notified when it's time you need to leave for the airport, depending on traffic, and using that app to kind of guide you through the airport, and potentially kind of pre-check you in for security using biometrics, kind of smoothing that journey from curbside to the gate. And then we also finally talked about maybe having some kind of workspaces or something like that for the business traveler to help them kind of do some work while they're waiting to get on that plane.
Okay, fantastic. So we've got some overlaps with the other teams again, hey, like similar solutions that might be one thing to solve some different problems. So we're going to I'll have you do the same thing, copy and paste the things you shared up to the top map. Team number 1, your map is going to be a mess by the time we get to it. I know. All right, team 2. Who would like to share?
Voluntold what to do. So
right.
I think the verbiage on headed out for vacation, I think we were talking, I think heading out for us was you literally headed out. And so we took it all the way to the arrive stage, but the ones that really stuck out for us was mostly when you arrive at the airport, the flight, and that piece of it. So when you're at the airport, we listed out some of the key metrics are probably ease of check-in, speed of security, but I think cleanliness of bathrooms and bathroom wait times. Yes, right.
Yes.
Are some of the big KPIs. Pain points is, obviously the line at baggage check-in. Everyone loves interaction with security, especially stateside TSA. Delayed flights and logistics around that. So I'll be super honest, we got to this piece right as the bell was ringing. So I'm not sure what exact pain point we're moving, but some of the projects that we were thinking are going on are things like ongoing construction for major airports, customer service, trying to deal with special needs maybe, and then special lounge for families with kids. Sometimes that's exclusive to certain airline clubs. Some airports are more friendly than others, so it depends on the airport largely.
For sure.
The flight is really sitting in the airplane waiting to take off. How long that takes sometimes can be unforeseen, especially if you have some young kids. And then the overall satisfaction with the service. How patient are everyone with maybe some uncomfortable kids that are impatient. Undetermined length of time waiting take off. That was also one that was the pain point. And then as far as projects, we were thinking things like flight operations, sales and marketing. They don't make it very family friendly when they're trying to sell me a credit card. And then obviously interactions with, depending on your flight, government, customs. The last piece of it is things like when you arrive, how long does it take you to get off the plane? People being, very kind and patient for families to maybe help exit. Percentage of baggage recovered. If you've ever lost anything, that is a very lovely experience. The percentage is pretty low. And then arriving on time. Obviously, if you have a family and you're trying to rush across the airport, that's not a very convenient thing. Missing luggage, delayed arrivals, connections, and then of course, projects could be green line with parents with kids. So I think I'll just pull up cleanliness of bathrooms. Team, you feel free to let me know if you don't agree. Satisfaction with service, on-time arrivals. Sound good?
Yeah, the ones you've got marked there. Cool. Okay. So team number 1, what I'd like you to share is some of the things that you guys pulled out as being most important in your map. And then I'll put you on the spot, but only if you want to. If you heard anything from those other teams that kind of lines up with or feeds into some of the things that you were discussing on your highest level map. Who would like to speak for team 1?
Katie, would you like to start? And I'll jump whenever you feel like.
Yeah, I can do that. So is this still, you want us to choose our three areas? Yeah. Okay.
You just don't have to move them.
Okay. I guess maybe if the team's good with it, I'll focus on the pack, airport, and flight sections. So for packing, we focused on the number, and we took this from, we kind of went back and forth of whether or not, think about this from the airport's perspective of what they would be measuring. And so that's, that's kind of how we put together the key metrics or the KPIs. So as an airport, we would measure the number of overcharges in terms of if a suitcase was over the 50-pound limit, and how successful successive task of actually ultimately being able to not have an overcharge, because it's a pain point for travelers in general, because it's typically an unplanned charge. And so people are doing everything that they can to make sure that they're not having that unplanned charge. And so when that comes up, it is a pain point. And so a project, we kind of focus more on like the purpose of the project, but how can we make sure people know the requirements beforehand, giving more visibility into either the weight limit or, these are the measurements of a suitcase that will fit an overhead bin. The second one is the airport experience. So we talked about the KPIs here could be the number of complaints, comfort of the waiting room, as well as number of necessary number of questions, like an overall waiting time. And this is due to the pain point of fear of missing flight from the customer's experience, as well as the amount of time that they're waiting. So they might have gotten there too soon or too early, and so there's not really anything to do. Could be kind of boring, or the food is really expensive. And so some projects that we were thinking of is better understanding, like, where do people struggle the most to help reduce the overall time, and then as well, do people, doing a research project around, do people understand how much time to give themselves for a particular airport? And then the last one is the actual flight. The KPI metric is customer satisfaction. So how satisfied were they with flying with this particular airline that's connected with this airport? So your customer fidelity cards, and some of the pain points for this is there's no, there could be no entertainment options available. Limited space for luggage, either over or under the seat. No Wi-Fi, and something that we talked about that's relevant now is fear of getting COVID. We want to make sure that the airlines that are with us, again, are meeting our customers' needs. And some projects we thought of as how passengers think of entertainment during a flight, and also how to visualize biosecurity steps they can take.
Okay. Thank you. So did anything stand out to you as the other teams were talking about, or really I can put this question to everybody as you were listening, were you kind of able to connect the dots and see how different projects are tackling similar problems from different angles, or tackling similar problems for different users? Was that apparent? Yeah. Okay. Does anyone want to share any thoughts they have on that?
Well, it seems like that mobile app's going to solve all our problems, right?
It's going to fix everything.
It's going to solve the check-in process. Going to, we had the idea that the mobile app's going to help with security. It's going to help with transit, right? So a lot seems to be right on making the airline mobile app better than anyone else's.
Yeah, it's kind of a big thing that involves a lot of people and a lot of different people's problems, for sure. So, I mean, what we really wanted to illustrate with this exercise is just how, often in organizations, we have a team who is responsible for the check-in app, who is responsible for designing the entertainment system. And that team responsible for designing the entertainment system might be completely different from the team who's responsible for thinking about the experiences of families traveling. And maybe they're not talking as much as they should. So when we start having our maps and saying, okay, we're going to use a journey map, not just to understand the customer experience that we're driving, but to also understand what we're doing in our organization. So almost that blueprint side, like what's happening to start driving towards changing this map and moving it more towards the future state that we want it to be. And then how do we start talking to other teams so we can compare our maps and make sure that we're not running into those clashes where we're both kind of trying to solve the same problem with a different solution, or we've got the same solution, but we've called it something different and we've managed to wrangle budget from two different places. And now we've got like two kind of competing things that are going to affect the experience in different ways. That's really what this whole process is designed to uncover in organizations. So we have a little bit of time left. I have a little bit more deck to share with you about how you can make this work in an organization. And then I think we should still have 10 minutes at the end for some questions. Does that sound good to everybody? Yeah?
Great.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again and get us back to that deck. And play. All right. Can everyone see my screen again, my deck?
Yes.
Is that Zoom window over it, or do you just see the slide? Okay, I'm going to assume just the
slide.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So this is really the question, right? We've got the customer at the center. We're all about that as service designers. And I think that what we're realizing is that when we get a whole organization on board to have this shared understanding of the customer experience, we now need to incorporate something into our management practice so that we can have relevance in the decision-making that's happening sort of across all of our silos. And so that's what all this is about. So first thing we start with is we need people who are assigned the responsibility of keeping maps up to date. We've been calling them journey map coordinators. So their job is to do what you guys just did as a team, which is keep your map up to date and feed relevant data from your map up to that high level map so that everyone has a shared understanding of what's going on across the organization. So in a small company, this might be one person If you're a little startup, if it's a small team, it might just be one person, but in a larger organization, it's probably going to be multiple people who need to coordinate with each other, and they likely work in different departments. And you're really looking at someone who is given the time budget to spend 2 to 4 days a month on working on this journey map management process. So we have our highest level map, which you designed. We have some zoomed in maps, which we also designed. So for that highest level map, and Scott, this was the question you were asking earlier, you want to look for that highest ranking person in the hierarchy who's in charge of customer experience. So maybe there's a CXO in place, maybe there isn't, but it's whoever is at the top. They need to own that top level map and take on responsibility for that. And then you're going to look down to your other departments, right down to your specialized teams. So who's in charge of this part of our journey? So in our travel example, there's got to be a team who's managing the mobile check-in experience. They own that app, they own the design of that app, they have a team of people that are developing that app. We need someone who's perhaps in charge of coordination of service at the airport between the airport and the airline, because the airline operates in the airport, but they don't own the airport itself. So somebody needs to be in charge of that. So you need to find who these people are all the way down to your micro journeys, and really find somebody who can raise their hand and be that journey map coordinator. And what their job is to talk to their colleagues. So not just in their departments, but they need to talk to the people around them to understand what people are working on and how that might affect the customer experience. And so this is that silo linking and that silo breaking that needs to happen, right? What other projects are happening in the organization that might affect the experience I'm responsible for, but are happening outside of my little bubble? So this is where you start thinking about changes in operating procedures, changes in legal. A huge example is when they put GDPR in place in Europe, all these privacy standards for people. How that changed the customer experience, because every time you went to a website or signed up for a newsletter or anything, that whole interaction had to change. But the legal people writing the legal policies probably weren't thinking about that. And so it's our job as experience designers to make the connection between what those kinds of departments are doing and to link it to how it's going to affect our customers and make sure that we're talking to all of those people. So we have all of these maps, and we know what the other projects are that are happening in the organization that are going to affect our experience. And those maps are linked, so we're feeding up the most critical data. So doing something like this really relies on having a journey map repository. Ideally, you're using some sort of a software that is designed to be a journey map repository. All of your maps are there. They're in the same format. You can link them together and you can sort of see across the whole what all of the maps are, whether they're management maps or project maps, whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, so by doing this, you have your journey map coordinators updating their maps. And then you have a sense of what all those current projects are when you look at this top level map. You know what's going on across the organization, and hopefully that's going to help you reveal those projects that are competing for resources. Figure out early on those projects that are running under different teams or different names and different budgets, but are actually solving the same problem. Maybe they're two completely different ways of solving the problem that are really going to be problematic when they both go to launch. So it's really bringing light to all of those different things that are happening. So what needs to happen
is there any prioritization within that highest level map to say, like, here, these 3 projects are our most strategic projects, or these are top?
Yeah. So that really should be happening in the meetings that we're about to talk about, understanding those priorities and how priorities are trickling down to the other teams, for sure. So we've had our coordinators go and talk to all of the people around them to figure out what's going on that might affect their experience. Now they need to come together. And so they really should be meeting on a regular basis. We've been calling these journey map councils. You could call it a journey map meeting, a CX meeting, whatever you want, but they're coming together on a regular basis to do a much more detailed version of what we just did when we shared those things and laddered them up. So some businesses can meet quarterly, maybe you want to meet monthly. This is probably the most common scenario that we're seeing, but it might even be weekly. Like if you're a small startup, if you're moving at a very quick pace, then you might need to do this weekly. So it's really just about the pace of business. It depends on the organization. A very, very large, complex organization, quarterly might be the right thing to do. And then when you come together in that meeting, it's really about synchronizing those projects organization-wide. So you're looking at all of those different projects that are happening. You're looking at how are we updating, you know, legacy tech, legacy whatever, to improve our experience. What are the initiatives happening across the board that are affecting our products, our departments? Where are we with our backlogs? And you're rising that up so that you're kind of getting the most important top line information from each of these teams that feeds up to management, so you can have a holistic conversation of what's happening across the organization. So before each council, every journey map coordinator needs to have their conversations. So check with different departments. What are projects going on that might be affecting the journey that they're responsible for? They're going to update the map that they own and anything that's above them. And then they're going to also update their KPIs. So how are we tracking towards these things that we've all agreed as a council are important to measure? And where are we going with our projects? And then when they come together, there is, again, this kind of conversation, Scott, I think you were getting at, which is the strategic conversation of not just seeing what's going on with everybody, but where are the overlaps? Where are the contradictions? Are there people not talking that we need to get in touch with each other early on? Let's do that. How are we performing? Are there projects we need to stop, pause till we learn more? Did something go in the wrong direction? Is there something we need to learn more about? Something we need to start? So it's really making all of those decisions that need to be made as a collective to kind of keep things in the experience design world moving forward. And that includes some of that prioritization. So, you know, what are the biggest pain points of customers that we should solve next, and coming to agreement. We all know that if the person at the very top of our management structure is saying, well, I think we should do this, and it's not lined up with the data that we're seeing on our customer pain points, then we're maybe not solving the right problems. So having this structure in place allows us to kind of, you know, de-hippo those meetings and get everyone on the same page and really making decisions based on the data we have from our customer research. You'd also be, through that meeting, looking at your roadmap, updating that, thinking about what is the research we're doing next, where do these projects fit in our roadmap? Is there something that somehow snuck in from some other department that we didn't agree on? Do we think it needs to move forward? Do we need to talk to people and learn more? You're really just trying to understand all of that and document all of your decisions that happen in that council, so that you can go back and update your maps after. You're also in that council going to define budgets. So if you've got new projects, you've decided, yeah, okay, this needs to move forward. We had a clash between these two teams. They were both working on two different things. And now we figured out the one thing and who's going to be responsible for it. Let's figure out exactly what time budget and money budget we're going to give them to do that, and who's in charge of what. And then at the end of that meeting, then we're going to update those maps again to reflect some of the conversation that happened and the decisions that were made, and then keep going until we're ready to go into our next council. So it's really about bringing those silos together. And we talk about this all the time with maps. Maps provide us with a way to speak from the same point of view, from the point of view of our customers. And this is taking it a step further into the management of our business and really more deeply into the decision making that needs to happen across all of our departments in order to truly keep the customer at the center as we move through that. So some of the to-dos, I mean, this is complex. We have glossed this over very quickly. I should actually do a time check when we think about it. This is complex. This is something that we present regularly to our customers at More Than Metrics. It's something that most organizations aren't ready to do until they hit a certain level of maturity where they are leading a CX practice and there are people in place who are working in an agile way and also working in a customer-centric way. You kind of need that there already. And then setting this up in the organization, there is some setup that has to happen. You really need to have that hierarchy in place. You need to have that repository of research data and really understand your KPIs and where is those metrics coming from and how are we tracking them, and make sure that you're building all of those things. And that is stuff that we can help with at More Than Metrics. That's part of what we do. But we were really excited today to be able to do this little workshop and share this concept and this idea with a bunch of our community, because I think maps have proven to a lot of us how powerful they can be. And this is sort of a whole nother level of what we can do with journey maps in our business. So I am going to stop my share if I can find that button. And open it up to questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to stop this.
I work in a large organization and we're not design driven yet. So as I said, what probably should be there as a foundation for this to work smoothly, we're not there. But is there some way we could use journey map ops to kind of break barriers bottom up? Like, is it even possible to like do it on a smaller scale and make change by starting with like bits and pieces?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the really important keys to making journey map ops work is all of those people that come together to meet around your journey maps. You need to have the power to make decisions in those councils and in order to move things forward, or else you're kind of just having a meeting and talking about what you hope to happen, and then you still have to go and convince someone else. I think that you can, and this I think is part of the whole like building the case for service design in our organizations, make sure that when you are building your journey maps, tying the data that's important to the people above you in the business. So those KPIs and those important focal things, the broader goals and vision of the company, if you can in your map tie those things to the experience that you're mapping to tell the story of where it is you want to drive things, you can start, I think, getting more buy-in for working in this way using maps and start paving a path towards having maps being that more active piece of the management conversation. So if you're starting early, it's a great chance to start just including those pieces of information in your map every time.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question in the chat here around, can product owners act as journey map coordinators? Yeah, I think really anyone who, if it makes sense for your product owners to own a journey map, then great, they should. I think that you might see, depending on how zoomed in or zoomed out you are. So if we look at the maps we built today at that micro journey level of, say, checking in, we might have it, like, to me, it's obvious there's going to be a product owner who owns that app, right? And they're sort of driving that team towards that. As you zoom out, you may actually have an end-to-end experience that involves multiple product owners. And so does it make sense to assign one of them that role? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It might depend on, you know, culture, personality, a whole bunch of things. So you need to think about that.
I would like to ask something not about product owners, but just about what you just said. So how many high-level maps do you should manage? Because there's only one high-level map, or according to the different segments or clients, then you should divide at least 2, 3 when you have a company like a bank or something really big because of the amount of diversity and segments that you have, because it's not possible to have just one high level map.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So I think your example of a bank is a really good one, because I could see it making more sense to have, say, business clients as a separate highest level life cycle. Like the life cycle of a business client might look very different from a life cycle of a consumer, like a B2C client. But you would still want to not parse it out too much. So you wouldn't want to end up where it's completely siloed and you have a high level map for mortgage clients and a high level map for people who have checking and savings, because in the world, those are probably the same humans. So you really want to kind of think about where that fine line is between having a couple different ones because it's what makes the most sense to your customers, and having too many and they end up just lining up with your silos and you haven't actually managed to create a path to communicating across them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just that it makes more silos when you have more high-level maps. And of course, then you have more BPs and more levels of hierarchy. How do you say that?
Hierarchy.
Hierarchy. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Yeah. So you want to be careful, I think, about thinking about that. And maybe, you know, it's going back to that conversation of how do we get started, right? Maybe you're a team and you're in charge of the business experience, and you can do the high level business experience and then trickle that down to a few other teams. And you still need to build advocacy in the organization before you can move up to another level that's broader. So I think there's sort of some, you know, those unique sort of paths to adoption that different companies need to figure out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have a question. In my organization and with an American health insurance company, so our projects can get very complex. And our team typically makes journey maps in Adobe programs. So the downfall is after we make them, they're kind of frozen because other people can't edit them. But at the same time, we kind of want to control it. So we don't want to pass something on to a team and make it to where it gets out of control, because if it keeps bouncing around, it can get, you know, the organization is lost. So I'm kind of wondering like how to strike the middle ground with this to where it's editable over time and can be living, but at the same time not go off the rails, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So a journey mapping software can really help you there. There's a few out on the market. We make Smaply, which is one of them. I'm not sure exactly how the others work, but for example, in Smaply, you can have your maps and you can have a few like different levels of access for people who have licensed access to the software. And then everything you create in it, you can generate a read-only access to that map. So conceivably, everyone in the organization could see that map, but only your team would have the ability to go in and edit that map. But it would always live in the same place and everyone would know that that's where they are. So that kind of gives you that balance and that middle ground.
I want to ask something related to this. Is there a way to save also like the history of the journey maps from the past as well, just to compare how is it evolving? And
yeah, there is. So right now, so we're working on a different way of versioning, but right now we keep an edit history based on your exports. So you can export to PowerPoint, you can export to Excel if you need to, you can export just even to a PDF. There's a few other exports you can make, and every time you export, that's in the history, and you can go back to that export and it's kind of frozen in time from when you exported it. So you can always go back. And then you can also sort of say, okay, maybe we've done research and this is the current state journey, and this is frozen in time. We're not going to change this because we're doing a project. And so we leave that, and then we're going to copy it over. And now this is going to be our evolving map. So we have a copy in our project of the map that we finished after our research. And now we have a second copy that we're starting to change as we start working towards our future state. So there's a few different ways you can manage that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've got a question here in the chat. 2 questions. Will you be sharing out the deck? Yes, SDGC will be sharing that out. Along with the recording. So if anyone wanted to, watch us sharing all this stuff, they can. The second question is the high-level map, does the high-level map have to be future state maps to show a vision, a goal to achieve, or do we have to see both sides, current state and future state? So I think when you're doing your management maps, you're looking more at the stuff that is customer-centric, is more current state, right? So I think stages, unless you're completely changing your entire business, the stages are probably going to stay the same. The steps might stay the same. How your customers experience the steps might change based on your decisions. So as you're bringing in pain points, those things really need to be current state because they're driving you to make decisions around how you're prioritizing the projects that you're working on. And then you should have that current state map kind of guiding your design, but that wouldn't be a management map. That would be like a project map, right?
Nicole, I have a question regarding how often the map should be updated, or like the people that are kind of responsible for them. Does that differ compared to like if someone is responsible to like a micro level customer experience versus like the higher level? So kind of think of the like 3 different levels that we talked about. Does that vary the how often they should be reviewing and kind of looking to update?
No, not really, because you've got your update rhythm is really set on that journey map council meeting, right? When that meeting occurs is really guiding the rhythm of when those management maps get updated. Project maps might get updated or changed or evolved at a different pace depending on how fast the team is working or what they're working on in that moment. But those management maps, it's really, we've laid out the structure of exactly what it is we're gathering and bringing forward. And before that meeting, I am going to make sure that I'm doing my touch points with my other colleagues to make sure I have the information I need to update that before my meeting.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. It's 3:01, so maybe one more question. It's like late at night for you guys. It's only 3 PM for me. So one more question, and then I think bedtime for some of you.
I have one question.
Sure.
Yeah, is there some kind of like early alert when there is a lot of complexity into the breakdown of this journey maps? Because I had once the experience of one company that it was a large company, but they were having this issue of splitting the journey in each department. So each different department owns a different part of the journey depending on their capabilities, right? So they break it down until like lower levels of journeys, but this created a lot of more like silos or closed look of the whole customer experience. And even though they had a like central customer experience department that was in charge of aligning all their visions, like the way they used it to work was very split because of the ownership of they are part of the journey, right? So I wonder if there is some kind of early alert that tells you when, hey, this is you're going too deep into breaking down these journeys.
Yeah, I think that's sort of some of the stuff we try to avoid with the coaching that we provide at More Than Metrics. But I think too that that's going to become a little bit obvious because you're going to hit a point where it is just unwieldy to manage, right? And I think too, if you have people who understand, and this is, I mean, there's a whole other conversation around embedding service design in the organization and how to get people doing this kind of work and really understanding how it should be done. And I would say if an organization is really chunking up the map based on department versus based on the parts of the experience, then there needs to be a retweak in what are journey maps anyways and how are we supposed to be using them. Because I think you're almost getting really like looking at it through the lens of the business if that's what's starting to happen. I hope that answered your question or at least touched on it. It's a complex issue. Sort of.
No, but you're right. I mean, I think that the key is in the coordination, and that's the figure that I didn't knew it was there already. To make sense of who's responsible of what and how do you keep moving forward to brought this customer experience to life based on the work of each department or each smaller experience.
Oh, did I just lose audio? I think I just lost audio.
No, we hear you.
There we go. Okay, great. All of a sudden things went very dark. All right, it is just about 5 after the hour. We're going to be sharing out, so SDGC is going to share out the slides and the recording. I've got everyone's email address, I think, and if I don't, I know the SDGC does. So I'm going to PDF our little mural work and make sure everyone gets that as well. If anyone wants to have a bigger conversation about this, you can find us over at morethanmetrics.com, and we're happy to have a more detailed conversation. I spoke with Mark before coming in to facilitate this workshop, and this is really his baby, his academic work that drives the thinking behind this, and he's there leading our organization to help companies who want to move forward with this sort of a methodology. So I hope everyone learned something today. Did everybody have fun? Was it good?
Thank you, Nicole. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, everyone, have a great weekend. It's Friday night for most of you, and thank you so much for coming. It was great. I had fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.